Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and start the regular meeting Monday, January 14th, 2019, 6 p.m., City of Lamarque. Let the record reflect that all members of council are present. If you'll please stand for the invocation and pledge. Lord, first of all, we give you praise for the opportunity to be here, Lord God, doing the business of this great city. Father, I ask that you guide and direct us as we make decisions that affect people in their everyday lives. God, we pray a mayoral and pastoral blessing over each person under the sound of my voice and their extended family, and ask that you bless them in the way they need it the most and meet us all at our point of need. As always, take us to our appointed destination without incident or accident. We pray these things in the matchless name of Jesus. And all who believe and receive, join me in saying, Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First item on the agenda, it's my great honor to make a proclamation this evening. I'm going to ask Miss Nikisha Paul and her guest, whoever is with you, to come up. Office of the Mayor of the City of Lamarque proclamation. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the chief spokesman for nonviolent activism in the Civil Rights Movement, which successfully protested racial discrimination in federal and state law and led the United States Civil Rights Movement from the 1950s until his assassination in 1968. And whereas Dr. King, by his preaching, his example, and his leadership, helped to move us closer to the ideals on which America was founded. Dr. King's voice was truly prophetic that reached out over the chasm of hostility, prejudice, ignorance, and fear to touch the conscience of America. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. challenged us to make real the promise of America as a land of freedom, equality, opportunity, and brotherhood. And whereas there are thousands of parades, celebrations, marches, and other memorial activities each year, along with the date being a national holiday in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his outstanding preaching and leadership. And whereas this year marks the 6th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade that the Lamarque Alumni Association will host, which is scheduled for Monday, January 21, 2019, beginning at 10 a.m. at the Lamarque High School. And whereas Nikisha Paul and the Lamarque Alumni Association has been diligently coordinating and staging this parade. And now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council, urge all citizens and businesses to join and hereby proclaim January 21, 2019 as 6th Annual Lamarque Alumni Association Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade Day. And encourage all citizens to join all of us in recognizing the Lamarque Alumni Association for their hard work and dedication to ensuring this parade to be such a special event. In testimony whereof, witness my hand and the seal of the City of Lamarque, this 14th day of January 2019, Bobby Hawkins, Mayor. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Let's give them another hand. Next item on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is citizens' participation, limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public. At this time, any person with city-related business who has signed up may speak to council limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. As I've often said, in layman's terms, that means if we sit here looking at you like a calf staring at a new gate, it's because the law keeps us from speaking back to you. First one is Mr. Richard, is it? Chittum. Thank you, sir. If you'll give your name and address, please.
Richard Chittum, 2404 Newman Road. My concern is our sewer system. Every time it rains for probably at least an hour hard, our sewer backs up every time. Can't flush your commodes. It don't back up into the house, but you can't go flush your commode. And at the end of 2404 and 519, probably at least 4 or 5 days a week, you can smell sewer very, very strong. From that point on down to Newman by False Distributing on 45. That one stretch of area is a real strong sewer smell. I've heard that there's been a lift station that's supposed to be put in, but haven't heard anything since then, but that's our concern.
Thank you, sir. We'll have the city manager contact you. And just a point of information, we have hired an engineering firm to look at all of our water and sewer systems and try to find a solution. Thank you. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Council, anyone wanting to pull anything from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 7, under public hearings. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the time, please.
6:07.
6:07, we will close the regular meeting and open up public hearing time. Item 7A, conduct a public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting resolution number R-2019-002, approving the dissolution of the Public Improvement District Number 3, Park Meadows, being located within the corporate limits of the city of Lamarque. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Going once, twice, 3 times. Item 7B, we're going to continue that until the next meeting on February 11th. Item C, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding...
So they want to go ahead with it, but after the public hearing, we'll just continue it afterwards.
No vote, in other words.
Instead of closing them all, keep that one open at the very end until the next, when you close them all,
Yes,
with the exception of that one.
right. D, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting resolution number R-2019-003, authorizing and creating trails at Woodhaven Lakes, Public Improvement District Number 4, within the corporate limits of the city of Lamarque. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Item C, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2019-002, creating tax increment reinvestment zone number 2 for Omega Bay subdivision, a contiguous geographic area in the city of Lamarque, under the provisions of Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone at all?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Darcy,
anyone at all is here.
welcome.
Thank you. As soon as I can. Is it down? Okay. Mayor, my name is Sue Darcy. Council members, I have been retained to assist you all in looking at ways to help the property owners in Omega Bay reconstruct their streets. And tonight, I know you have a really jam-packed agenda. We've put this presentation together to be as comprehensive as we could so that you had something to give to the public, general public, if they had questions. But I'm going to rip through it really quickly in hopes that I don't impair the balance of your agenda tonight. outline for what we have said here is what is a TERS, how does it work, what's the creation process, the composition and role of the board of directors of the TERS, and the concept that's being proposed for this particular financing vehicle. Tax increment financing in Texas is often referred to as TIF, T-I-F. In order to use tax increment financing, a city must create the designated specific geographic area in which it intends to use this tool. That's called a tax increment reinvestment zone, thus the term TERS. And the increase of new value in this geographic area is what creates the revenue that funds the public improvements that are done. It's analogous to having a payroll deduction, if you will, each year to put money aside so that it builds up over time, and then you are achieving a specific goal with that revenue. The way it works is, which button is it? Is it the top one, the pointer?
Oh, it won't work on
Oh, okay. The way it works is the blue area, A and B, are what you are getting now in revenue from Omega Bay. That line will remain constant. You aren't giving up anything that you currently are getting. So you're not taking away from any of your general fund money that you're getting. What goes into the TERS, as you can see, is C and D, and that would be two jurisdictions if we're lucky enough to get the county to participate. And that growth happens over time, over the duration of the TERS. And the goal at the end of the day is to get everything reconstructed, let the city collect all of the revenue again, both the added value and the, oftentimes you hear people or the paper quotes that taxes are frozen within a TERS. They're not frozen. You're going to set your tax rate exactly as you always do every year, irrespective of the TERS being there. And the new value just simply accrues into the tax increment reinvestment fund, and whatever, if it's there, it continues to grow. The impact on the property owners, and we were given the 16 questions that were given to you in the public presentation where you call this public hearing. So we've tried to address some of those. The impact on the property owners, to the individual property owners, they pay their taxes as usual. There's nothing different from them. It's totally transparent. Galveston County Tax Office will annually calculate the amount of the increment and provide you with reports in that regard on an account-by-account basis. The city is required by statute to segregate that TERS revenue into a restricted fund, just like you segregate your PID revenues and your other revenues that are restricted. The TERS funds may be invested, but interest and earnings on those funds remain the property of the TERS. As revenue builds up, it will be used to design, engineer, and reconstruct the street system, and the TERS fund is annually audited as a part of your city's audit, so it is an audited fund as well. So what's the creation process? If a property has more than 30% residential, the statute calls for it to be created only by petition. It can only be created by petition of the property owners. So this Omega Bay's petition drive resulted in, I think, definitely more than 51%. The city, if you agree to accept those petitions tonight, a preliminary project and financing plan that I think is in your board packet has been drafted. That's not the final plan, that's just the basis by which you would make the findings that are necessary to create the zone if you decide to move forward. You're holding a public hearing tonight, and if you approve that, then you have the opportunity to create the zone by ordinance. There again, there's just a requirement for the 50%. The project and financing plan, this is what has to go in it. It isn't a very creative outline. It's mandated by statute, and that's what the contents of the preliminary plan are. Your board of directors will have the responsibility for drafting the final plan, and it must substantially match what's in the preliminary plan. The creation ordinance, you have to do a number of things. You have to set the boundaries of the zone. You have to name it. You have to establish a board of directors. You don't have to name those in the creation ordinance, name the persons, but you have to establish the board. You have to set the time limit on how long the zone is going to exist, and you have to establish the increment fund. The board of directors, statute also sets forth for petition TERS that it must be 9 members. If the state senator gets an appointment, the state rep gets an appointment, and each of the participating jurisdictions gets an appointment. So if we go get the county, they'll get appointment. The city fills the remaining slots of the 9 members. Of the city's membership, there are qualifications. The person has to be at least 18 years of age. They must own property in the zone or be an employee or an agent of someone who owns property in the zone. A snapshot of the roles. So what does the board do? The board will draft the final project plan and recommend it to you. You have sole right to adopt it. They are charged with really one sole task over the term of their of the duration of the TERS. They are there to implement the plan. They don't make policy, they don't make recommendations, they don't do anything but do what you're telling them you want done within the plan. So they have a very important role, but a very limited role to play. City Council, you will evaluate the petitions. If you so choose, you'll create the zone, you'll appoint the board of directors, and you alone can approve the final project plan. Generally, you can, however, designate powers to the zone board to do things on your behalf. And for instance, with regard to the TERS projects, the board may identify, select, and approve projects to be funded per the financing plan, bring those back to you and say, this is what we'd like funded next. And they can also construct eligible projects from the increment. Limitations on the board, and this was related to some of the questions that were in that list. The board may not issue bonds, they may not impose additional taxes or fees, they may not exercise the power of eminent domain, and they, of course, cannot approve the final project plan. The concept that we're proposing, or that they are proposing, is that a majority of the residents in Omega Bay would like for the city to have the street ownership of the streets so that maintenance and reconstruction in the subdivision could occur. And that's why a specific financing vehicle to accomplish that has been proposed. If the city chooses, the city will create a TERS to finalize that funding mechanism. And what would happen then is that the city would take ownership of the streets. We still have to work through the mechanism for doing that. Take the ownership of the streets, and once they are made public, then the city could maintain those streets in the same manner in which they maintain all other streets in the city. So the roadway project, let's be realistic about what it is. It's going to take a long time because increment is going to build up slowly. As funds are available, engineering will be done, reconstruction of the roads and related bulkheads will be performed. It's estimated that in today's dollar, the total of all of that as complete and concrete streets will total $4 million. The projects will be phased in logical packages to be most cost-effective as money is available. And again, the completion of all this could take many years. About the streets real quickly. The residential canal zone of the city provides that a 20-foot right-of-way for Omega Bay. That matches the existing right-of-way and streets in Omega Bay today. What is being proposed will reconstruct the streets in exactly that right-of-way and exactly that width. So no additional right-of-way needs to be taken. The new improvements will be designed to fit what's there. And we had a question about golf carts, and state law allows that golf carts may be operated on public streets under certain circumstances, and that law will apply in Omega Bay once the streets become public. The next step are the second reading of the ordinance at your February meeting. At your convenience and your decision, you can appoint the board of directors either at that time or at a subsequent time. Once the board is directed or is appointed and empowered to begin, they will draft the project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan, which will be pretty substantially close to what the preliminary plan says. And then, of course, you will have the authority to approve the final plan. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Councilmember Bell, it's good to see you again.
Thank you, ma'am. Now there will be a written test, so if you'll pass those in.
Now, what is it?
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. I'm sorry I missed your agenda this morning. I was driving on Interstate 45 out of Houston, which is a slight nightmare. Gentlemen, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about this tax reinvestment zone. And basically, when I bought my property many years ago, I think it was one of the first houses out there, and I know Mr. Sakonis well, and bought the property because it was private. The roads were private. The deed restrictions indicated they would never be anything but private. And so I'm not really opposed to tax money paying to repair the roads, not at all. I don't have any problem with that. The thing I do have a problem with, and I think the presentation before mine was right on point, the only problem with that is this is the first time I've heard it. Our civic association or improvement committee is kind of impotent as far as that's concerned. We never get anything in writing from them, never get any minutes, never get anything at all. And some of the questions that I had, I think when I was here last time, I gave you the presentation, things that I were concerned about that I didn't know the answer to. My next door neighbor is the lady who brought to me the proposal that the reinvestment zone take place. I asked her some questions, and she really didn't know. And her comment was that the best thing to do would be, of course, bring it up to City Council. when I was looking at the financing structure, I looked at my own taxes for the last 5 years. And in that last 5-year period, my tax valuation of my house has gone down twice. Not much, but a little bit. And so if I were to take the 5-year tax benefit that I paid to the city and the county and the school district, and I understand we're only talking about city taxes now, that I would have contributed literally pennies to this investment zone. Not much at all. Talked to some of my neighbors who are in the same position I am as far as how much increase in city tax was charged to us. And this presents the problem. There's a big, huge pothole now at the end of my street. And if I were to wait until this investment zone generated enough money to fix the pothole, I kind of wonder how long that would be. And one of my neighbors said that we would probably not be alive, hopefully she's talking about somebody other than me, would not be alive by the time this investment zone generated enough money to fix the roads. And I don't know if anybody's put pencil to paper and figured that out, but you can extrapolate a little bit on how long that investment zone, that difference in the money, is going to take to collect that. In the meantime, if you want the streets, then I want to know who's going to fix the pothole at the end of my street, and am I going to have to wait until my children inherit my property to have the pothole fixed, or is there some plan on how much money is this thing going to generate? One, when is it going to generate that much money? Two, in the meantime, if you're responsible for the streets, where's that money going to come from? Is that going to come from the general fund, from the general revenue? I don't know what the answers to those questions are. But those are things that I think you guys should consider as you go forward with this. We talked about the go-karts in the street. And, you know, everybody drives the go-karts, and I think that's great. The kids ride them. Kids under 21 ride them. I think that's fine.
Golf carts.
Golf carts. But, you know, if we the streets become city streets, then my goodness, you know, certainly somebody's going to complain, and somebody's going to call the police, and somebody's going to get a ticket, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having said that, if we get the streets repaired, if you come in with the funds to do that, that's great. Folks can quit riding the golf carts on the street for all I care. But if not, we're giving up private streets for what purpose, and when is all this work going to be done, and who's going to pay for it? The estimates that we have that I've heard are $3 to $5 million. I just heard also now another question that I had is that, my goodness, how wide is this street going to be? I looked at your ordinance, as I was told to do, and if your streets are as wide as what your present ordinance requires, you're going to take 13 feet into my property to make the streets the minimum size for the city of Lamarque. So that means you're going to have to either come in and take 13 feet and pay me for it, or you're going to have to reduce the size of the minimum streets, which you can do. I don't certainly have a problem with that at all. But the issue, that's not decided. So a lot of things that aren't quite yet decided on what's going to happen with this zone. When will it generate enough money to be of some significance? And am I really convinced that I need to give up my private property rights if this thing isn't going to materialize financially for 20, 30, 40 years from now? But thank you guys very much, and I do want to say something also aside from this, that I really appreciate the help that your staff has been, from your public works director, when we talked about the streets, the issues with streets, to everybody else on the city staff. The cooperation that they give to citizens, especially me, in trying to research this kind of thing has been amazing, and I thank them very much, and I certainly thank you because you're the guys that hired them all and put them in place. But thank you so very much. Any questions of me? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
No, well,
Councilman.
I'll respond to some of the questions. Mr. Shelter, we've been working on the turrets. I know that we've had multiple meetings since I came on board council last, a term ago. That's been almost 4 years now. And it's been at several of the meetings of the HOA. We did have an engineering survey done of the entire neighborhood, utilities, streets, everything, to the question of taking, and that's where the numbers were derived from as far as what it's going to cost. We used some benchmark figures as far as average property rates as they continue to go up, what these models will present. Additionally, what's not in here is that for the county to have a appointment on this board, then they would have to participate. I have a verbal commitment from one of our from one of our commissioners, that they would participate. That is an official thing that we'll have to take before Commissioners Court to do. I fully expect that that'll happen. The county has participated in every church that's been created within Galveston County, so I do not see that they would not participate some in this, and whatever that amount would be appreciated. This is the first step in order to allowing to be, as a municipality, to be able to address these issues for the community. So the establishment of the TERS is the first step. The roads will be built, as Ms. Darcy just stated, to the exact same dimensions that they are now. They're not taking anybody's additional property. And every resident within Omega Bay has paid property taxes on their lot, not to the center of the road. Nobody's ever paid taxes on those streets, as a property owner. All of our golf carts today, if you drive across Highway 6 and drive into Bio Vista, many of them do, and most of them, they have to meet the minimum state law requirements to pass that road. That's not an issue for us there. I see this as a win-win for not only the city of Lamarck, but also for the residents there. We basically don't have another method of repairing roads or rebuilding them. And the TERS board that will be appointed, Ms. Darcy summed it up, I think, very effectively, with what their rights are, what they can do and can't do. There will be no additional increments to or burdens on the taxpayers of that community. But what that board does is basically a construction project management team. And they will know what their budget is. They're going to know which ones need to be fixed first, and they will synchronize that order. And that will be their charge, basically. So tonight, our goal is to, create this TERS going forward. This is the public comment, and then we'll have our first reading of the ordinance here.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I have a couple of questions and comments, and I was hoping to ask Ms. Darcy about, I don't know, should it be now or should it be later?
No.
Okay, so, since this was definitely, when this first came up, was my first foray into TERS, I did, as best I could, a lot of digging and trying to immerse myself in that language. I spent a lot more time looking at the tax code than I thought I would.
Interesting, isn't it?
And it's fascinating. But I just had a couple of questions, and some of them were already answered by you. But so from everything I was reading and looking at other cities that have implemented TERSs really successfully, it looks like a lot of them center on areas of blight or on areas that the city really wants to spur redevelopment. And that's part of why the TERS is settled on as the most effective tool because they anticipate fairly rapid property value increases. And so one of the things that I was curious about and that you did address was sort of the length of time that we would be looking at and until we had enough funds to really address and fix streets.
One of the things that we did, and Mr. Schilter's, if his property values have dropped, they are among very isolated instances in Omega Bay. We looked at 5 years' worth of tax history, and on average, Alan, help me out here. 10% per annum increase.
Per year, 10%
Per year,
increase?
per year.
Okay.
So the numbers that are in your plan
Yeah.
are showing a 4%. He's the real guy that knows this, a 4% increase per annum. So if they do any better than 4%, which they, for the past 5 years, have done 10%. So we've been tried to be very conservative with the numbers to not lead to unrealistic expectations. But they will produce hopefully more than we have projected in the plan.
Okay, and so if you mentioned 4 million, right? Was that sort of a ballpark figure for
Right. Yes, ma'am.
extrapolating to get the streets to what they need to be? And do we have a ballpark figure for, with counting on that conservative 4%, how long it would take the TERS to accrue that money?
Between 20 and 25 years.
Between 20 and 25 years.
Okay, so we're talking about a 20 to 25-year plan. And so I knew it was, thank you.
Actually, you're talking about a 30-year plan, so
Sure.
that you can have time to do everything you need to do. But you
Right.
can always end the zone early if you get everything accomplished. Come on up, Alan.
Okay, so then my next questions kind of revolve, there's two areas of interest I have, and one is about what's the best interest of the city and our obligation to, when we accept something as, city property and something to be maintained by the city, what are we then we are obligated to have a certain level of quality and anticipating that, 30 years of citizens expecting that their streets will be fixed, but then we're saying...
Let me
Yeah,
clarify something
please.
there.
Please.
The TERS is not a maintenance vehicle. The TERS is not going to be there to maintain and fix existing potholes. The
Yeah.
TERS is a capital improvement. It's going to be reconstructing the streets. The reason to
Correct,
get
right.
the streets to public status is so that the city can begin maintaining them on the same basis that you maintain other streets in the city.
Right, but that's what I'm talking about, is when we accept, so currently, the streets are not up to city standards, right? They're,
I think they aren't up to the construction standards, and they aren't up to the right-of-way standards. In terms of their physical hardiness as roads, I don't know that they're any worse off than any other streets in the city of Marque. I don't know that. So we talk about what you're going to be taking over. There are things that you can do remedial-wise that you all can do as a part and parcel of your annual budgeting.
Right, but it is additional streets,
right,
it's additional
right.
footage that we're taking on and
Correct.
saying we will maintain.
Yes, ma'am.
Not to do capital improvements to, but to maintain at the same level as all other streets. And
Yes,
that's what
ma'am.
I'm saying is, communicating that to the residents of Omega Bay as well. And,
Absolutely.
them understanding, like, this doesn't mean all of a sudden your streets will be perfect.
Right.
So there's that element. And I wondered if there were, there's obviously the original intent of the neighborhood, which was to be private, and reading through those documents, I wondered if there were other alternatives that I was just curious to have more information about, and maybe you guys could answer about, like, property owners associations, like levying a special assessment for one-time capital funds like that, and that would keep it private within the Omega Bay zone.
Back in the 60s when this was developed, over time, properties have changed hands numerous times. The general population in this part of the world, like everywhere else in America, is aging to a certain extent. And more, this property turnover creates a lack of intense scrutiny on the part of new buyers. Just, properties sold, they don't necessarily pay attention to the difference. The general public oftentimes doesn't even understand the difference between public streets and private streets. They may think it means I'm gated or something like that. And so what happens is you now have a situation where once streets begin to deteriorate and there's no financing mechanism like a property owners association. They don't have the bonding power, they don't have the power to do a lot of things. They just can raise money, and that's a pretty steep assessment on property owners. There's a tipping point at which that disruption to the integrity of the street can begin to affect property values. And I think that's what a city doesn't want to have happen, is that some of your most expensive real estate begins to deteriorate in value because of something that is just very difficult for a private entity to do on its own. And over time, with property ownership changing hands, you as the city deal with that ability through levying your tax rate and collecting your taxes every year. Doing that on a private basis where people can default, you can have bankruptcies, you can have all kinds of things, then it becomes a legal burden on that private entity trying to do it. So we did look at a public improvement district, and there again, the property owners are paying their assessments. They are paying among the highest taxes in the city. Their values are among the highest that you have, and they felt like that they would really rather do a property exchange now we haven't completed this yet, so this is the concept that they will in essence give you the right of way, the dedication to you, the real estate, just like you get in any other subdivision, and you would take over the maintenance, and then the tax increment reinvestment zone would reconstruct the streets so that you can maintain the integrity of that value out there.
So is there precedent for other TERSs? Well, anyway, is there precedent for other TERSs that, so let's just say the current condition of the streets is substandard. I know it's not like, Beirut out there or anything, but is there precedent for the city like not accepting the streets right of way until a certain time has passed and to ensure that the TERS has accrued enough money?
May I suggest something to you? That we have the board of directors. Number one, you've got to get ownership of the land. That's going to be the next hurdle. This issue's been lingering in the city for 20 years? 25 years?
Since 1975.
Okay. So I was brought in to help define a process that would, at every stage, say it's a no-go or it's a go. We can do this. So we came in, we surveyed the streets, because I first said, you got to know what you're buying, you got to know what you're ending up with. So that proved up that the streets are really located where they're supposed to be, and the right-of-way is located where it's supposed to be. Then number two, financially, how does it look? So we looked at 5 years' worth of history. We said, okay, we did the financing model. And that proved up that, it's going to be a long slug, but you can, over a certain length of time, maybe get that money. And if the county comes to the table, we can shorten it considerably. And then next was, okay, what's the right tool? And we spent 6-8 months talking about the various tools that we could use. The TERS was the one that gave us the longest duration. We could have done a neighborhood empowerment district, but that only gives you 10 years, and you can't renew it. There were just a number of hurdles along the way. The TERS was the one that gave us predictability, a long term, a board of directors, the things that gave the homeowners assurances that they would have a say, et cetera. So that was the one that was settled on. So now we're creating the TERS in a good faith effort to show the homeowners who got the petitions, we'll create the TERS. The next step is to secure the ownership of the right-of-way. And that's yet another piece of work that we have to do, because there are some legal questions about the platting language, et cetera, and thus and such, who really owns it, how did they acquire it, even if the Property Owners Association actually owns it, can they sell it? So we've got the next hurdle. With that being punted to the Board of Directors, that along with the final plan, you are going to be constrained at first by money. There isn't going to be enough money coming in. Right. But during that time frame, you can get a sense for what the annual revenue is going to be, and by the third or fourth year, you can take a look at it, and if it is looking like you can get on a program of doing things, then you'll know. If they don't get the land in ownership, then we're all going to be back here dissolving the TERS. So that's the next step, and then I think we can punt the look out toward success to the Board of Directors in the final plan, and come back to you with something that gives you some comfort level that there should be a window of performance. Either it's going to work or it's not, and if it's not working, say, in 10 or 12 years, then maybe you could do something about it. But you need to give it enough time to find out, because you're not going to know year two.
Right. I understand that. I mean, and I think, again, it just keeps coming back to me about, like, the relationship of the residents understanding that this is a very long-term project.
The residents actually were given this nearly identical presentation that you had. they understand it's going to be a long slog. The ones who attended the homeowners association meeting.
That's what's key,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's not
The ones
just
who
that-
showed up.
That
Yeah.
information is out there in the universe, but that doesn't, and I
Yeah.
mean, that's true for all city business, but I really appreciate you answering those questions for me. The only thing that's still lingering is just this idea of not having a full concept grasp of what the city's financial obligation might look like towards maintaining the streets over the next 25 years, until we're able to make that capital improvement with the TERS funds.
I
Do you
believe
have-
capital improvement will come as money builds up. It won't be something like you wait and do the whole project at once. It can be one street at a time. There were, in the surveys, in the engineering surveys, there were two methodologies that were proposed. One coming in around 3.1 million, the other one around 3.8. The 3.1 was a perimeter road and all cement with the turn-ins being cement, and that's, you get a lot of wear right there. And then the interiors, lateral roads being blacktop. Now, that's rebuilding as each section is done with new road base and everything. The only thing different would be they're going to be narrower. They're not going to have a curve, you know. And then, so one section at a time can be done. It's got to be as capital, so it's got to be a complete new build. The 3.8 version was entire cement, and I know that our consensus from our HOA was, you know, to go ahead and bite the bullet and go for the entire amount. You know, if we were to look at doing an assessment across 280 so homes for this at $4 million, it's just under $15,000, you know, per household. Yeah, and the issue about the private roads, yes, that was the developer that did that so that he could get a city council that, at that time, to agree to allow him to build the thing, because he wanted more lots, and he didn't want to give up the road space. You know, and of course, there are no residents at that time, and as residents move in, and I can testify that firsthand, realtors are not obligated to disclose the private road issue, and most don't, and so they don't really realize that. And, so, yeah, I think you would find with most residents in there, it should have never been a deal ever made from the very beginning, but it is what it is, and we're just trying to rectify it and get things back on track. I think maintenance on any road, we have a problem with doing some maintenance. You know, we have some residents that are willing to do it themselves. If they can get a few bags of the ready pour, you know, they'll fix potholes. But yeah, it's pretty critical.
Okay, I really appreciate you answering
No
my
problem.
questions. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Georgia Sharp, and I live in 12 North Omega. And to answer your question about, you know, the filling of the potholes and things like that, we already pay road taxes to the city of Lamarque that we never got anything for that helped fix all the roads in Lamarque. And I understand that as you call the city and report a pothole, you go on a list probably, and as they get to it, then they fill them, you know, they fix them. And I know we've already paid taxes all these years to the city of Lamarque, and there's a little road tax section. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but it's part of our property taxes. So, you know, to answer your question about revenue, to do the maintenance portion of it, I feel like, and I'm sure most of the other residents, if they were here and heard this, is that we would probably feel like you've already paid, and so therefore, you know, we would just go on a list with all the other roads in Lamarque, and then as you got down to us, you'd fill our potholes. I mean, I don't think anyone expects you guys to be there tomorrow filling potholes, you know, but I'm just saying that that's how a lot of people, I think, feel about it is that we paid into this fund, and so therefore, as far as the maintenance part of it, new construction will be taxed like Sue said, but the maintenance portion of it, we would hope that some of those tax dollars that we're paying in would, go to that as we go to the list of the city and say, there's 2 potholes on North Omega that needs to be filled in, and you guys put us on the list with everyone else. So we're really not expecting you guys to pay all of the maintenance portion of it. We feel like that we put our money into that portion of it.
I would agree, but as long as the roads are private,
Yes.
we can't touch them.
I understand that, and that's why we're all wanting this to happen.
To work.
And, she was asking, would the city have to pay the money for the maintenance portion of it? But again, we feel like that we are contributing to that, and I don't think anyone in Omega Bay expects you guys to be out there the next day filling all of our potholes over and above the city of Lamarck's. We figured you would put us on a schedule like everyone else and get to it when you could.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I just wanted to answer how
Sure, and,
about that.
I think my questions come from just anticipating those kinds of due diligence questions that I would expect other residents to ask, and that question of, you're right, if it is to be accepted that it is now city property, it
Right.
is treated as everybody else, and past monies paid don't factor
No.
in, it's not
I
one of those
understand
things,
that,
but I fully agree. If it is to come to pass that it becomes city property, then yeah, it's treated exactly the same.
Thank you.
When all is said and done, I'll be 100, so I'll be happy to come out and ride in the golf cart parade, and somebody can lead me around.
There you go.
On the other hand, Casey, Chris, Mayor Pro Tem, and you guys might be around to see this, so. Yes, sir.
I think, Mayor, that what I heard was true. We're going to be dead before it works. Hopefully that's not the case. Let me point out one thing to you about the road construction. In Omega Bay, we pay $225 a year maintenance fee, $225. The roads are built on clay. In answer to your questions, what would be the alternatives? The best thing, of course, is that we pay full tax money. I'm for that 100%. In the meantime, obviously, we are looking on down the road for something of any consequence to happen. I completely understand that also. The problem we've had forever has been the fact that the roads haven't been maintained. What does that mean? Well, you know that when we formed this canal district, they included in the ordinance some things that had to do with restrictive covenants. For example, deed restrictions say you can't run a business out of your house. They also say that in the canal district document. Another thing that's in the deed restrictions is the fact that the roads are crowned and that the water that runs off the road onto the adjoining properties. What's happened over the years is the Architectural Control Committee of the association has not enforced those deed restrictions. The homes have built up a little berm, a little driveway lip along the roadway. And so when it rains, if you drive in Omega Bay, you can look and see where all the puddles are on the road. Always on the curbside, always in front of driveways. And as the water sits there, the water will eventually go through the asphalt because it cracks. Asphalt, after a while, loses its vibrance. It has to be resealed and retreated. The water goes through the cracks to the clay softens, vehicles, trucks, whatever, drive on it, and if you look at the roads, you will see water pooling. Go back and look at it when it's dry, and you will see that's where all the repairs have taken place. So the Canal District, in its ordinance, says that the water shall drain from the roads to the lots, but not into the canal. I don't know why that happened, but nonetheless, that's what it says. So that means water drains off the road, onto the adjoining lots, but not into the canal. So I guess the water is supposed to pool on the private lots and then evaporate into the air, whatever. But at least somebody has looked at that when the canal district was formed. The problem with the roads has simply been they haven't been maintained. They haven't had a slurry seal put on them to handle the cracks. The architectural control committees allowing new construction driveways to be higher than the road, water pools, water soaks in, that creates the issues. So, and I give you that only as an answer to your question. And again, I'm all for taxes taking care of the roads. I think this young lady back here was talking about the road and bridge tax that appears on your tax bill, which is a county tax for county roads and bridges. But and I want to just take one quick opportunity to thank Robert for all his work that he's done on this. He's done yeoman service on it, and God bless him for that. I just hope we come to a solution where this will be taken care of and expeditiously and as financially soundly as possible.
Thank you, sir.
We had another question in the back.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Jim Lewis, I live on North Sandpiper, and just going through all this discussion, and obviously we're here in 20, 25 years. What's realistic if this is adopted before we're honestly going to see the first piece of blacktop or concrete? Are we still realistically talking 20, 25 years? Or are you, like Ron was talking about, incrementally? Are we talking 3 or 4 years? We've got a lot of residents that are not here, they're still asking questions. Yeah, we're all here, you wouldn't have enough room. So, the question I have that I can take back, post out, and answer questions for people on our street is, when do we realistically see something, if this is adopted and a board of directors is formed, before we're actually going to see some activity in Omega Bay?
Ms. Darcy, could you speak to that, please? And since he's beside you, you can speak from there if you like.
Oh, no, I love a mic.
Oh, wow.
In your preliminary plan,
Better get right on the mic. I don't think they can.
in your preliminary plan, you have a annual revenue.
Right.
Do we show the county?
That includes the county.
Including the county. And at years, go ahead.
Hi, Alan Mueller with Marsh Darcy Partners. The number of 20 to 25 years, that was for full reconstruction. As has been pointed out, more than likely it'll be done in packages as you go. So just for example, by year 5, we're projecting about $175,000 to be available. So, it's not going to be overnight, but by year 5, you could probably see something starting to happen. But it's going to, since we're basically relying on the appreciation of the properties as opposed to any new growth, those early years are going to be slow growth, but then it starts to compound. And so when you get into those middle and late years, you start getting bigger chunks as you go.
Thank you. That help you, sir?
Yes, Red, that's helpful to understand how that process works. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? I'd just like to say that I too appreciate Councilman Mitch Titch and the work he's put in on this. This can has been kicked down the road for years, decades, and I believe this is the first mayor and council that has really taken this seriously and tried to take the first step. And that's what this is, a first step. And we're not engineers. We don't know all that it takes, but we are at least willing to try to give you some service for the taxes that you pay. And that's simply what we're doing this evening is getting the process started. Minds like our engineering firm and Mr. Den and Mr. Den Ho, our engineer, and Marsh Darcy and others who do this for a living will guide us through the process. And so I would simply say we're doing this evening, at least I think we will when this vote comes up, to at least start that process and try to be of some help to you. And that's simply all we can do. If Lamarck, if I win the lottery next week and I don't play the lottery, I'll pave a couple of roads for you, but it's a process. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
road. Been there, done that, lived all over the place. Okay, Lamar doesn't want to fix it, fine. We take care of ourselves, fine. No problem, we'll do that, we'll keep doing that. But maybe we could, maybe Lamar pays our water and sewer bill. No, we pay that. Okay, maybe Lamar pays the trash bill. No, I mail that check in every month too. Okay, maybe just drop our taxes 90% and we'll take care of ourselves. Anybody on the board will vote for that?
I only see your hand, sir.
Well, let me say this, let me say this just to answer that question.
I'll answer the question.
I think the premise, let me say what I need to say. I think the premise, your premise is fundamentally wrong in one way. There is not any person on this council that's refusing to repair or replace your roads. That's not what's happening here.
Well, I mean, I'm talking, we're down there, we're like a little wart on your ear.
You didn't hear what I know you're frustrated, but you didn't hear what I said. Don't ever confuse us not legally being able to do something for you with us not having the desire to do something for you. We cannot legally.
I would really believe that y'all really want to take care of it.
We are doing everything we can to take care of you, sir, and to take care of our community. Omega Bay is our community. We're doing everything we can to take care of you. We are legally prohibited from doing anything to your street in the same way that as much as I would love to, I can't go to the mayor's driveway and repave his driveway and repair his driveway because it's private property. We're doing everything we can as fast as we can to adopt your streets so that we can immediately, as soon as they are adopted, begin to at least repair, fill potholes, and do whatever we can do to try to help our community. There is nobody on this council today, nobody on this dais today that looks at Omega Bay as anything other than our family. And that's the way we're moving forward. Legally, we can't do anything. It would be against the law.
I know you start with baby steps.
Okay.
I mean, that's a process.
But I appreciate your frustration, and I understand where you're coming from.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Bell, thank you. Sounded good.
Yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and clap for that. I think that was very eloquently put and heartfelt, and we all five of us feel that way. If we could get it done any sooner, we would. Once again, we're the first council that's even taken this up. In how many years?
48.
If there's no one else wishing to speak on this, we'll move to item D. Oh, yes, sir.
One technical question, maybe it's a legal question you can answer. 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, assuming it goes through today or the next week, and you're all gone or different mayor, different council, can a future mayor and/or council change the agreement or cancel the agreement and upset the cart, or are future councils required to adhere to what this council agrees to?
Ms. Darcy. I'm not, if I don't know an answer, I'm going to say I don't know and call on someone who does.
Mayor, there are a number of things, again, we're in a process. There are a number of things that come beyond once we have the final plan in place and the board impaneled. And those are what are called development agreements. And those at every section will be with some entity, most likely the homeowners association, whereby you will be contractually bound to have the TERS in place, the funds collected for the repayment of and the collection of future road constructions. So those contractual agreements that will be put in place with every section of the road will protect that construction and that obligation. With regards to a council being able to dissolve a TERS, you can dissolve it. Future councils can dissolve it. But they will take on the liability that exists. So after a while, once your track record is there, you should be safe, a prudent counsel. But to your question, if you go 8, 9, or 10 years and you've paved 300 feet, a council might say, you know, we could do better taking this back into the general fund and doing it ourselves, or putting it in a road bond issue that you're doing for the balance of the city and take care of it that way. There are lots of ways that might make better fiscal sense in the long term, but the contractual agreements that will happen on a project-by-project basis will be the things that will protect the then existing projects. Yes, sir?
So is that hypothetical scenario, then would the future city of Lamarck residents and/or council be required to pay your group some monies to make you whole? Or would you have to take us to court to do that? How does that work out?
I'm sorry?
So 5 or 10 years from now, let's say a future city council decides, like you indicated, they determine, hey, no, I think we could do from now on ourselves, our general fund.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a contract clause somewhere that says, okay, well, the city of Lamarck still owes this amount of money from year 8 through 25?
I don't think that would happen because the engineers will be paid timely as part of the project funding. I'm on a 30-day window. Mine's a monthly contract. So that there aren't going to be fees that are going to be built up. They'll be paid out of the projects. So every time you get a discrete project, there'll be fees that'll be associated with that project, and they'll be contractually obligated at the time that that project is approved. You'll know what the fees are, and that's what gets paid.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, then any obligations fizzle out after, let's say, 6 months or 1 year after they decide, some future council decides to take a different direction, it's not going to be on the financial obligation beyond a year?
No. The reason this is being structured the way it is to make it as administratively light as it can possibly be, so that all the dollars can go into construction.
Final question, can Lamarck residents tonight go online to you have a website where they can download and maybe hard copy the details of what you presented tonight?
Do y'all have it on the web? Can y'all put it on the
Is that
website?
in our background?
This presentation is not in our background.
Can we do that?
The plan and the ordinance are.
The plan and the ordinance are on there. The background material, we'll have that put on there tonight.
Final question?
No,
That last question was your final question.
Well, because there's maybe 100 people there at most, and we're 15,000 population or more, will the water bill contain a notice advising everyone who bothers to read it that they can go on the website and avail themselves of its information?
Well, it's going to be on there not tonight, according to our IT person, and this is broadcasting live. And most of the Omega Bay people that are concerned about this issue are obviously here. So I would just spread that to your neighbors, as you've been doing, that this background material will be online tonight on the city website. Because the next water bill, they may want to know that information before that happens.
And by statute, we were required to put a notice in your paper of general circulation, so we've given public notice, official public notice.
Yeah. This was in the Galveston Daily News, this public hearing. All public hearings are advertised in the Galveston Daily News by law. Any other questions? I sure hope not, but I'm here to.
Let me make one last.
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody here from the Omega Bay Improvement Committee, the Board of Directors? Anybody here at all? I would ask if these folks are present, we have sufficient money in the bank, that the information that's been collected, I've not heard Ms. Darcy before. In fact, I don't know who she's employed by, whether she's employed by the city or by the Omega Bay Improvement Committee. But I would ask that our members of the Board of Directors take this information that we're collecting and mail it to the 280 people that are property owners in Omega Bay. Now, Robert was correct. They have meetings and information's passed on and different information's passed on and it changes, but we don't have that consistency. And so therefore, that's why I had 15 questions tonight and 15 questions the last time. So I'm just asking if it would expedite information to the 280 homeowners out there, property owners, that this information be disseminated directly to the property owners involved. It's simply a suggestion.
Yes, sir. That'd be an in-house decision by your board. Any other input on the public hearing? Anything else? Thank you very much. It's very stimulating conversation. Glad to be a part of it. We're here to help. But moving on down the road, so to speak, item D, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2019-003, adopting and imposing impact fees. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Going once, twice, three times. Thank you. Item E, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0017, waiving registration fees for the rental registration program until December 31, 2018, obviously a rhetorical date, and approval of an updated brochure and registration forms for the rental registration program. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, item F, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0018, accepting the City of Lamarque Engineering Design Criteria Manual prepared by Attico LLC Consulting Engineers. Anyone wishing to speak? Going once, twice, three times. Item G, conduct public hearing to hear public input regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0019, establishing procedures and criteria for appointing members to boards and commissions. Anyone wishing to speak? Once, twice, three times. Thank you. 8, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the time, please.
7:07.
7:07, and we will continue item 7B's public hearing until next month's meeting. 8A, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0017 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I second.
Motion second, and further discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0018 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item C, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2018-0019, establishing procedures and criteria for appointing members to boards and commissions. I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 9, new business. A, discussion possible action regarding adopting resolution number R-2019-002 for the dissolution of the Public Improvement District Number 3, Park Meadows, being located within the corporate limits of the City of Lamarque. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B, discussion, possible action regarding a proposed development agreement between the City of Lamarque, Texas and Woodhaven Lakes Limited for trails at Woodhaven Lakes subdivision, and provide direction to the city manager. How would you like me to proceed here? I see people anxious to speak.
Hi, Mayor. I'm Julie
Hi.
Partain with Bracewell, your bond lawyer.
Hi.
Hello.
So this item is with respect to the creation of the new PID for the new development, Woodhaven, Trails at Woodhaven Lakes. I believe that Dara sent out today, we do have a draft development agreement for you to take a look at. We're recommending that you postpone the creation of the PID until you had a chance to read the development agreement, figure out what your business deal is, come back in the February meeting, and then approve your development agreement and create your PID kind of all at the same time. I usually recommend that you don't create the PID till you get your deal done.
Thank you.
So we've been back and forth several times with this developer. I know he's spoken with the city. I forget the acreage. I think it's about 50 acres. I believe most of you are aware of where it is. Somewhere around 200 single-family homes is what he's looking for. He wants the city to create a PID. As opposed to other PIDs you've done in the city, he wants this to be a bonded PID, which would mean that which is why I'm here, your bond lawyer, we would issue bonds to fund this. Now, he is proposing that he would upfront the cost, and he would put in the public infrastructure, and that he would be reimbursed once the infrastructure is in. So your risk is minimized in the sense that you're not providing bare land financing. He is going to put in the public infrastructure with his own money. We have some parameters in the development agreement. We are still negotiating with the developer and his lawyer. They have this draft right now. I do not have their latest comments. I'm sure it's coming. So we're still sort of going through it, but we wanted to sort of brief you as to kind of where we are now so that you could be ready when we come back in February and have taken a look at the agreement and decide, sort of where you are, where you stand, and if you're good with where we're going. He will develop according to your standards and your zoning. We are asking him that he will start construction of the public improvements. These are generally, I don't have a detailed list, but they're generally what you would expect: water, sewer, and roads. There may be some landscaping involved. I'm not sure yet, but I know the bulk of it will be water, sewer, and roads. These will all be public improvements. They will all be owned by you. They will be your improvements. He's asking that he has 18 months from the time that we approve this development agreement in order to begin the public improvements, and then he is telling us right now that once he starts, he will finish the public improvements within 18 months. Now, he wants to do them in 2 phases. He will probably plat in 4, but for our purposes, we're talking about developing in 2 phases. So he wants to put in the public infrastructure in phase 1. We would levy assessments, issue bonds, reimburse him. Then he would move to phase 2. He would put in the public improvements in phase 2. We would levy assessments and pay him back. The city has asked him, I think Charlene has asked him for some concessions with respect to when we issue bonds. Right now, we're working on the idea of there would be 120 lots on the ground and 80 homes had begun construction before we would issue the bonds. He would also have the amenities completed. Those would be like, trails, lakes, those kinds of things within development. Then he would need 60 additional lots or homes. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's lots. Before we would do the second phase. He would also have to establish a HOA and a POA before we would issue the first series of PID bonds. And we have some parameters in there. 33% of the board of directors would have to be made up by homeowners before we do the first issue, and then 66% of the board would have to be made of homeowners before we do the second. The mayor would have an appointment on that board up until it reaches a certain size. Those are some of the concessions that we're working on before he would sort of get his money, get his deal from the city. I think from a development timeline, I think he's looking at probably taking somewhere around 5 years to completely build out the entire subdivision of the 200 homes. But like I said, he's committing to, once he commences a public infrastructure for a phase, he would complete that public infrastructure within 18 months.
So as bond agent, you're recommending we table item B?
Yes, I'm recommending that you not take action tonight. I'm recommending that when we come back in February, that you would approve the development agreement and create the PID at that time, if you're good with the agreement and the deal that you've made, or as we continue to negotiate with them. But that's kind of where we are right now.
Thank you. Council, I would entertain a motion at this time to table items B and C.
So moved.
I second.
Any further, no discussion on the table. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, council. Item D, discussion, possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2019-002, creating tax increment reinvestment zone number 2 for Omega Bay subdivision, a continuous geographic area in the city of Marque under the provisions of Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Omega Bay people, you probably ought to give us a hand on that one. And you're welcome. Item E, discussion and possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2019-003, adopting and imposing impact fees. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Item F, discussion possible action regarding adopting ordinance number 0-2019-004, approving a road right-of-way abandonment for a portion of 60-foot road easement, clerk's file number 8843301, located in Painted Meadows, Section 5, specifically overlapping lots in Block 1, Lots 1 through 8, Block 5, Lots 10 through 17, Block 4, Lots 2, 3, 16, and 17, Block 3, Lots 1 through 20, and Block 1, Lots 2 and 3, on behalf of 2 Windy Hill Investments. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Item 10, contracts. A, discussion possible action regarding awarding LMC Corporation a job order contract for the reconstruction and re-roofing of Building C located at 4916 FM 1765 in the amount of $376,413.32. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Item B, discussion possible action regarding approval of a change order for LJA Engineering Project number E019-1002 to Statewide Services, Inc., to decrease the original bid of $412,190 by 8.79%, $33,300, making a total cost of the project $378,890, with an increase in contract time for approved time, extension of 45 calendar days for completion of the project. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion second. Any discussion? It's always good to gain money. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 11, appointments. Discussion possible action regarding appointments and/or reappointments to fill various positions on boards and commissions. Anyone have anything?
I do. I would like to appoint Ms. Alana Brown to the Keep Lamarck Beautiful Commission.
Hi.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And also, oh goodness, let me find my page. Forgive me. Sorry, we whipped through those, and after all that took so long, and I wasn't ready. Mr. Caleb Smith to the Building and Standards Commission.
Thank you. Hi, Caleb. It's nice to see you. We'll take both of those appointments in one. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Council is going into executive session, but I want to give everyone a chance to speak, say their hellos and goodbyes and whatever, starting with Ms. McCullough. What?
It's not on the agenda.
The executive session?
The requested announcements. It was erroneously left off.
Erroneously left off.
Good thing I have no requests nor announcements.
I had talked to him about it earlier today.
Yeah, we can say nothing else?
If it's not on the agenda,
I'm going to ask you to pray for Mr. Clint Brown, who's in bad shape, and I'm going to go ahead and violate the agenda by doing that. But I think it's important for a former council member who is in some serious health situations to earn our prayers and receive our prayers, and I would ask you to do that. So, the City Council for the Lamarck, Texas reserves the right to adjourn into executive session at any time during the course of this meeting to discuss any of the matters listed below, as authorized in Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberations about real property, 551 .073, deliberations about gifts and donations. 551.074, personnel matters. 551.076, deliberations about security devices. And 551.086, economic development. We will be meeting tonight under section 551.071, consultation with attorney, discussion of development agreement for trails at Woodhaven Lakes. Will you call the time, please, ma'am?
7:21.
It's 7:21.
Mayor, unless the council or you have some specific questions or comments on the development agreement at this time, we actually don't have to go into executive session. That was just an item in case.
Thank you very much, and hallelujah.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll entertain a
Thank you,
motion
Chair.
for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.